Hi. First of all, complete admission. I'm not from a dev background. I'm not from an ops background. I know very little about dev or ops, and even less about DevOps, which is why it's going to be quite different. So first of all, I'm just going to introduce and test the laptop. Hey, okay, this is me. At least this is how I see myself. I appreciate to other people, I don't always look quite like that. So my background, I come from a management consulting style background. My interest here is enterprise level transformation. I spend most of my time in a product or an agile, should we say, space. I'm deeply distrustful of the term agile because it has been twisted and manipulated to mean something quite different to what it was originally intended. And what I'm here going to try and talk today about is what the great intentions that I see from the DevOps sort of movement, and how I see those being similarly replicated elsewhere, and how I see the constraints that are being applied upon our ability to progress in that direction coming from elsewhere. So there is a deep lack of content on any of these slides, and that's for a really good reason, because the fewer facts and words I put up here, the fewer things you can call me out on, all right? So, first of all, I'd just like to sense my audience. I've been to loads of meetups across London for years, and I do not recognize anyone in this room at all. So one of the things I'm interested in here is to understand what are the skill sets we've got in the room. So can I stick my hand up if you would identify with the term dev? Okay. What about if I said ops? Okay. What if I said that both of those are really close together? DevOps. Like SRE. Apparently one of my colleagues said, no, you've got to say SRE because that's what all the cool kids say. Yeah. So here we go. You got, yeah, some people are ahead of the game. Awesome. Hands up if you do not identify with any of those terms. Hooray! Marvelous. Okay. Okay, so that means basically I'm totally out of my depth. But I think this is really important. So one of the things I find that's really important in any industry is to appreciate what's around you. And sometimes it is not what is happening inside that is the problem. It's what's happening outside. So now I'm going to just embarrass myself and give you a quick rundown on my perception from an external of what is DevOps. Hey, okay, so a long time ago there was dev and then there was ops, and they were completely separate, and generally speaking the things that the dev people did took so long to do that they could package them all up and deliver them to the ops guys on an annual basis, and they can then do their stuff and ship it out. And then as the world started to get a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit more complex and a little bit more competitive, and we got better. And actually the problem is of our own making. If we remained useless, we wouldn't have this problem. But because we were able to do things a little bit faster and everybody wanted something a little bit sooner, then we started to find that the handover from one to another started to become increasingly awkward, and the problem lies somewhere between the two. It's not dev. No dev would ever say they are accountable for the problem. It's always ops' fault. As far as ops is concerned, it's never their fault. They're doing exactly what they've been told to do, what they've been trained to do. It's worked for years and years and years. The problem is the expectations that the dev community now have upon them. So the problem clearly lies somewhere between the two. Now, obviously, if the problem exists in the gap between two things, the obvious solution to fix that is to remove the gap. Yeah? If there's no gap, there can be no problem. All right, and with that we receive unicorns and rainbows, and everybody lives in this sort of utopian nirvana that is the happy world of DevOps. And then we could all retire and there would be no more problems if that was the case. Now, my limited experience in this place is that this has not worked, that we still have significant problems. Although it's really interesting to see that the talks we've had tonight have been completely different. So clearly the first talk was very much about how do we solve the problems we've got. And I didn't understand a word of it. I'm sure it's very good. But clearly we're talking about how do we actually address the problems of being able to get something through a system in a continuous fashion. And obviously the more aligned the various environments you're trying to do, the more consistent your operation, the easier it's going to be. Even I understood that much. But clearly we've got something that's not working. And when we have things that don't work, this happens. I'm actually going to refer to my notes now just to make sure I'm not skipping stuff. You see, I have got notes. Yes, done that. Moving on. All right, okay, so things are not well. So clearly, one of the things I'm quite interested in is to understand what is the problem. And I think one of the problems we've got is that whilst we said we've merged it, and the blue and the yellow people have now become green people, we've labeled them green, but deep down inside, we're not. Yeah, deep down inside, in terms of how we identify where our training, what our background is, where our cultural affiliation is, we've repainted the system. Now, I see this all the time with large-scale agile transformations. Yeah, project manager, no, Scrum Master. You know, and it's just like you can't just change somebody's ideology and what matters to them overnight through a training program or some course or a meetup or anything like that. It's cultural. What you're trying to change here is culture. It's not process and tooling. So I think that a lot of the problem we've got here is that we fail to appreciate the nuances that separate the various identities that have been brought together. Now, I encounter this in terms of large organizations with institutionalized operations departments. Now, if you're from a much smaller, more nimble startup, or you've recently taken your operations from an external vendor and you brought it in-house, then you may not have these problems, because in essence you are natively DevOps, in the same way that certain companies are natively agile, and they don't have the same problems as other organizations that try and adopt those kind of approaches. Now, there's the best expression I've seen from this. I'm going to steal from Tim Minchin. Everything I've said tonight, by the way, I've stolen from somebody else. Because this way, if somebody calls me out, I can just blame somebody else. Tim Minchin gave one of the best presentations I have ever seen. He gave it as the honorary university acceptance speech from the University of Western Australia. If you've never seen it, do watch it. It's one of the most powerful presentations I've ever heard. And one of the things I think, to steal his kind of concept, is that the problem we've got is we're always generating this sort of false dichotomy between us and them. In essence, we've got two people trying to argue a single point, but using two completely different sets of assumptions to support it. As he says, it's like having two tennis players trying to win a match by executing beautiful shots from either side of separate tennis courts. In essence, you are arguing almost against yourself using your own argument, and they are doing the same. And the problem for this is it's all going to be about identity. So, that you get this picture a lot, because everything boils down to people, process, and tech. This is so because management consultancies say so, and it makes life easier for them. And I think one of the problems we've got here is that whenever you draw this, you'll always draw those circles the same size, right? You would, obviously, because you've got three things, you'll put them up there on the board. But that's not true, and this is the problem, is that typically, especially in this room here, which of these circles do people most identify with? Where would you look to focus your efforts? Okay, shush you. No, but typically what I find is that most of the effort, most of the conversations, most of the discussions, most of the articles, most of the meetups, most of the content is going to be focused on processes and tools and tech. But actually our challenge really is here, okay? Most of our problems are associated to people. What we're really finding is, even if we can talk about processes and tools, then the problem is the people's ability to agree on them, the people's ability to actually follow through and comply with the processes that they themselves have created. And what we're finding about is what do we care about? And it's finding that last little piece of the puzzle. Okay, so this is how I think the world has happened. Okay, so what do we care about? We've shone a light and we've seen, oh look, this is what I can see. In my world, this is what I can see. And then to try and improve the situation, we've appreciated the relationship between these two things ain't great. So we've done that. We went, woo! And now everything is supposedly better. But I'm not entirely sure if it's made everything better. It might have made things better for the torchbearer. So I don't know, does anyone know who this person is? Great. Okay, so this guy is a massive influencer on myself personally. A guy's called Simon Sinek. He's a management theorist, I suppose you might call these kind of people these days. And one of his famous saying, you can't type Simon Sinek into Google without getting the response, start with why. All right, so this is the question I'm going to ask, is why is it that we are unable to make substantial, why have we not solved the problem? Now, I think the problem here is if you can know why somebody is doing something, then you will understand how you can look to improve the situation. Because we are rational beings. We do what we're told. We do what we think is right, given the information associated to us, given where we will find our own success. Okay, and it's 85% attitude, it's 85% purpose, 15% talent. Now that's what you're going to get your success from. Getting smarter people or smarter tooling is not going to fix your problem unless you care, is what it's really going to come down to. So the question I'd like to ask is, who's holding the torch? That is going to answer your question as to how you can help your processes and practices improve. Whilst it's very easy to shine the light on the problem, understanding why your problem is not fixed is going to be answered by finding out who is holding the torch. Anyone know who this person is? I could just do a quiz show of random people. It'd be great. I'm going to tell you who I think who are this person. Although it actually wouldn't make any difference because I could have put anybody's photo up there, really, couldn't I? This is W. Edwards Deming. He's the guy behind systems thinking. All right. Now, systems thinking is about an appreciation of a complex system where the optimization of any single component may well be to the detriment of the whole, and that the changing of any one component will affect potentially every other component. And this is massively critical when it comes to trying to look to see how I can improve my DevOps situation, because the problem is not dev and the problem is not ops, it's the wider system. So what is my system? This is supposed to be a graphical representation of a system. This is the best thing I could find on Google Images this afternoon. Our system does not exist to ship software. No, we are not here. We don't work to write software. We don't work to deploy software. Those are merely the tools of our trade that enable us to do why we are employed. And we are employed to provide value to our clients or our customers or society if you happen to work for the public sector. Yeah. Code is a necessary evil. If we could, we can prove this very easily, because if you can achieve the same goals and the same ends and get the same value to the client without writing a single line of code, we would. It's just we haven't worked out how to do that yet. Okay. The purpose of our entire system is to deliver value end to end. Now, the problem we've got in that person who's shining the light is trying to improve our DevOps system is that they're not looking at it from end to end. What we see, unfortunately, these days is because our systems have become so large and there's so many people involved in it, there are many people holding the torch. All right? There they go, you see? Each one of these people is trying to optimize our entire system, but they're doing it within the constraints of their own environment. Yeah, I can see myself, I can see to the left, and I can see to the right, and I can see no further. And my motivation, my principle, my reward, my self-identity and purpose in life, and what pays my mortgage, is going to be related to the delivery of the piece that I own, and I am cognizant of the people either side of me, but I fundamentally do not own the entire system. And the optimization of the entire system is not my problem. The problem is, it's nobody's problem. So, yeah, let's see if this works. People are actually looking to try and improve the system. You see, that's fundamentally where DevOps sits. But then you're not alone, yeah? You're in competition with those guys and these ones, yeah? Everybody's trying to optimize their own piece adjacent to the next piece. So actually, if we were able to take the torch and look at it from a true system level, yeah, then you'd see this. Now, this is what we're actually trying to optimize for. We're actually trying to optimize for true end-to-end flow. Then you don't want to be a single person at the top. We are looking for the queen at the top. See what I did there? What we really need here is purpose. What we really need to be able to try and address the problems is a collective sense of purpose that means that the value flow through your system genuinely matters, okay? Because whilst we kind of understand the tools and we understand the processes, it's ensuring that those tools and those processes get the attention that they deserve, get the time and the money to be able to put these things in, and people are willing to compromise their existing operations within product, within UX, or within operations or change management in order to ensure that the optimizations we're trying to make within DevOps are possible. But also, we also need to be cognizant that if we spend all our time and effort focusing on the optimization of the gap between dev and ops, it could be to the detriment of the whole, including our ability to be able to come up with good designs or be able to operate the system down in some sort of change management function. The thing we're looking for here is a collective sense of purpose and identity and reward and recognition. Whoever it is that is responsible for looking after dev and looking after ops, you'll never get a good DevOps culture going unless you apply the same rules, recognition, and rewards to both parties. Right? If there's anything applied to these people which allows them to feel like they are working to subtly different goals, then fundamentally it will never be as successful as if you're able to address that. The problem is not really the tooling or the technology. If it was, you'd have solved it by now. And from what the conversations and talks we've had earlier tonight, it's quite clear that there's some really, really smart people doing really, really smart things and solving those problems. So the challenge is, why are we not able to better adopt those problems into our organizations? And the reason is because the people making the real decisions about what needs to be done don't genuinely consider this to be part of their problem. It's not really about the process. You'd have agreed that by now as well. The problem is that the people involved in your entire flow don't have a single sole fixation on a common goal. They are sharing their sense of identity, purpose, rewards, and recognition. Okay, they in essence, within your organization, these functions are competing within each other for the opportunity to get better. It's utterly ludicrous. People are locally optimizing in competition between departments for a global detriment. So what's my suggestion? I think we should find someone responsible for that. It'll never catch on because it's too long. So yeah, this is my apologies for attending a DevOps conference and not speaking or knowing anything about Dev or Ops. This is me. I spend most of my time doing stuff around systems thinking, complexity theory, theory constraints, organizational enterprise change, this kind of stuff. I've learned a lot tonight. Thank you very much. Some of it I even understood. And I'll be available for any kind of questions afterwards. I think this is a great opportunity, and I would encourage more of you to spend more time understanding the issues and challenges in the efforts to locally optimize the other stages of your value workflow. Thank you.